This was an undesirable development for Jahil. To begin with, the reason Jahil had formed a cooperative relationship with Feldway was to fulfill his own ambitions. To achieve revenge against the primordial gods and dominate this central world. That was Jahil's true desire. Upon learning that Zelanis also desired territory, Jahil had given up on conquering the entire world. However, he had no intention of yielding all the key strategic points. What Jahil wanted was either the fertile Great Jura Forest or the prosperous Western nations. Ideally, he wanted to bring the entire central continent, including the Great Jura Forest, under his control. If Zelanis were to seize the Great Jura Forest, Jahil would have to abandon his ambitions. Although he wanted to prevent this, he couldn't come up with a good plan, so there was nothing he could do. However, even if he gave up on the Great Jura Forest, he had no intention of giving up on the wealth of the Western nations. Since his values regarding territory differed from Zelanis's, he believed that coexistence was possible. He would seal off the Great Jura Forest as a habitat for the insectors, while he would take the civilized benefits for himself. But there was a problem. Feldway would likely bring the Eastern Empire under his control, but Damargania, like Jahil, had his sights set on the Western nations. Jahil was troubled over how to find a compromise, but he had a plan in mind. He would cede a large portion of the Western nations. Specifically, he would give Damargania the northwestern part of the continent, including Riberios, Ingratia, and Falmonas. Then, he would make the southwestern part of the continent, including Sarian, his own domain. By dividing the world into 4 parts in this way, they could cooperate with each other and develop together. And by accumulating strength eventually, if Jahil could rise to the top, it would be the best possible outcome. Even the old Yuzania could be annexed depending on the circumstances. However, if Vildora's authority cannot be revoked, it would be meaningless, so this land remained a challenge for the future. In any case, what mattered most was his own interests. Jahil thought this way and had also been investigating the situations in other regions. It was not in Jahil's best interest for the territories he intended to seize to be ravaged, so it was somewhat fortunate that the final battlefield was in the Rebellio's direction. Damargania's defeat was unexpected, but since it meant that there was no need to divide the controlled territories, it could be considered a favorable outcome, depending on how one looked at it. As Jahil was contemplating the future, a report came in about the remaining regions. After Milim unleashed her Dragon Nova at the Heaven Tower in Damargania, she reportedly returned to the Sarian region. "What the hell are you doing, Feldway?" Jahil exclaimed in anger. The current Milim, who had gone into a stampede of madness, was the very embodiment of the tyrant of destruction. If left to her own devices, she harbored the dangerous potential to destroy the world. If things continued this way, even the wealth Jahil was supposed to gain could be lost. Damargania was in utter chaos, while Lubelius was hastily gathering his forces. Luminous had revealed her true identity, going as far as to exaggerate the crisis by declaring it a global catastrophe. She even gave a speech to the entire world, calling forth heroes from across the globe. Jahil had initially laughed at her theatrics, but as the situation rapidly evolved, he realized it was no longer something he could ignore. Milim's actions were concerning, but Luminous's final judgment could not be overlooked either. If even Valgrind had to be mobilized to handle the threat. Ivarage, a being from another world, one that could be called the true god of destruction, capable of annihilating entire worlds. If such an Ivarage were to manifest, then Luminous and the others' response was no exaggeration. Meanwhile, the battle to stop Milim continued in Sarian. Even Jahil had attempted to burn the divine tree, but only because he deemed it capable of regeneration. However, if Milim's Dragon Nova had been unleashed upon the tree, Sarian's destruction would have been unavoidable. It seems they're holding their ground against Milim, but this can hardly be called a battle anymore. Still, it's better than being completely overrun, but that too, is only a matter of time. Jahil was thinking this bitterly when a new report arrived. A mysterious entity had appeared and begun fighting Milim on equal footing. The identity of this being was certainly intriguing, but the report continued. What? Vildor has appeared. It was said that Vildor, who had defeated Damargania, had now arrived in Sarian. This makes no sense. I thought he would return to the labyrinth to deal with Zelanis. It was only natural that if things had settled in Lubelius, he would return to his home base. Especially now, when that very base was under attack. Jahil had assumed Vildor would be recalled to confront Zelanis. The ideal scenario was for Vildor and Zelanis to take each other down. Even if things didn't go that smoothly, if one was left standing, Jahil could finish them off. That much wishful thinking might have been excessive, but in any case, information about the labyrinth remained unclear. More pressing now was the battle in Sarian involving Vildor and the others. No, more than that. Fierce battles were erupting across the world. In the labyrinth, Zelanis was surely rampaging. In former Yuzania, it was suspected that Guy and Velzard were clashing. In Damargania, the threat of Ivarage was on the verge of emerging. And in Sarian, a rampaging Milim was wreaking havoc. Now then, Jahil pondered. In this chaotic situation, what should take priority? Jahil deliberated, then made his decision. Since Milim is under Feldway's control, leaving her be shouldn't be a problem. As for me, this is the perfect chance to settle an old grudge. Jahil's gaze turned toward Damargania. There, he expected to find Luminous, and he intended to use the chaos as cover to eliminate her. With a wicked grin, Jahil finally rose to his feet. The various armies of the Human Defense Front were fiercely battling their respective enemies. Among them, the Eastern Front was suffering the greatest devastation, engaged in a desperate struggle. Thanks to the barely maintained holy purification barrier, the moment of absolute defeat had not yet arrived. However, this only served to delay the inevitable by a little. Even though everyone understood this, they continued to fight with unwavering determination. The only stroke of luck was that the world-destroying dragon, Ivarage, has stopped moving. Seated on the shoulder of a massive demonic beast, it remained still. Though it watched the battle with apparent amusement, it showed no signs of taking action. There were considerations of attacking while it was motionless, but no one had the ability to execute such a plan. Even Velgrin was focusing on recovering her strength, and anyone else simply lacked the power. They had concluded that it was better to observe rather than provoke it recklessly. Moreover, if they could buy enough time, the situation might turn in their favor. Though in the end, we were relying on Remure. Luminous chuckled bitterly at the thought. It was an exceedingly fragile hope. The possibility that Remure's subordinates might arrive as reinforcements. With Zelanis reportedly appearing in the labyrinth, it was unthinkable that Remure's forces would have any resources to spare. Even so, Luminous couldn't help but hold on to that hope. She wasn't alone in this. Everyone continued to fight without giving up precisely because they still clung to that glimmer of hope. And if one were to speak of hope, that stubborn, audacious Remure. I can't imagine he'd just be defeated so easily. They say he's been cast away somewhere, but I can't shake the feeling that he'll just saunter back as if nothing happened. She had been told Remure had vanished, yet this was Luminous's true belief. The image of Remure that Chloe had described was an idealized one, but even based on Luminous's own observations, it wasn't far from the truth. He was confident, fiercely competitive, kind-hearted, and gentle, someone whose presence made others instinctively want to rely on him. Even the ever-tense Sonata, as sharp as a knife, appeared more her age when interacting with Remure. That alone was impressive. She was likely still believing in Remure's safety even now. If I were to admit defeat so easily here, who knows what I'd be told later. It would be vexing to be mocked by that guy, so I must stay vigilant until the very end. With that thought, Luminous steeled herself, determined not to show even a moment's weakness. The battle didn't seem to be going badly, or so it appeared. If they could reduce the number of cryptids before Ivarage truly got involved, perhaps they could manage somehow. That was how it felt. The tide was shifting in their favor. Similar battles were unfolding elsewhere, with efforts to minimize casualties being successfully maintained. While cryptids were individually strong, they were a species unaccustomed to group combat. Some did coordinate with their kin, making them dangerous, but the situation hadn't yet spiraled out of control, a relief in itself. If only they could do something about the world-destroying dragon, Ivarage. That was the thought beginning to take root in everyone's minds. Then, everything changed. Ivarage, who had been idly swinging her legs while sitting on the shoulder of a massive monster, suddenly grinned. I brought some new friends for you. At the unexpected remark, everyone froze in confusion. But in the next instant, they understood. It was unclear what kind of ritual had taken place beyond those doors, but the nature of the phantom beasts had changed. To put it simply, they had taken humanoid form. Most were grotesque, featureless beings lacking eyes, noses, or mouths, but among them were some possessing an almost inhuman beauty. The stronger they appeared, the more formidable their combat prowess seemed. Tsk, how annoying. Did they learn from watching our fighting style? Hinata muttered in irritation. Up until now, the battle had been against beasts, but once the phantom beast took on a humanoid form, it began using its hardened skin as a weapon, and even started employing techniques resembling swordsmanship. The uniform toughness of its outer skin had also changed. While the weaponized parts became stronger, the rest grew weaker. At first glance, this might seem like an increase in weak points, making it more vulnerable, but it also meant that its offensive power had risen, making it even more dangerous. Moreover, it was visibly learning tactics in real time. While its skill level wasn't increasing at an absurd rate, given enough time, the situation would inevitably turn against them. This is endless. What should we do, Calgario? Don't ask me. We have no choice but to take it down in a single strike, while keeping our abilities hidden as much as possible. Even though they understood that, executing it was another matter entirely. For someone as skilled as Calgario or Minutes, it might be possible, but it was not a feat just anyone could replicate. To make matters worse, the existence value of the higher tier individuals now surpassed those they had previously faced. It wasn't just their durability that had increased, some had even begun to exhibit ultra-speed regeneration. At this point, defeating them before they could learn any more was becoming increasingly difficult. This is bad. Ivarage has been watching the whole time. As Hinata pointed out, Ivarage had been observing the battle from the start. In other words, it was constantly watching, listening, and learning how to fight. The ominous premonition they had felt at the beginning was now becoming a reality. Everyone sensed it, the creeping unease rising from deep within their hearts, a new battle they had to fight alongside the physical one.